Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Alan, the CEO and co-founder at Contento. Hello.
Hey, Christian, very nice to meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Please tell us what your company does.
So Contento is a headless CMS. It's a brand new kind of approach to building websites focused specifically on B2B SaaS.
Okay.
So B2B
What?
SaaS companies that need a new website. We're kind of completely anti-WordPress. Have you heard of WordPress? Are you familiar with WordPress?
Yeah.
Have you heard of some of the issues that people have with WordPress?
No. Can you tell us?
Okay, there's lots. Security vulnerabilities, slow websites, user interfaces that are very hard to use, Christian. So our thesis as a startup is, time to ditch WordPress, time to look at headless. And Contento then is a sort of new approach that's very much focused on websites for growing and technology companies, B2B SaaS in particular.
What did you say is the biggest problem that you solve for SaaS companies?
I think so. So first of all, headless is kind of a new category, Christian, right? It's a new approach. It's a very technical term. Um, I guess just to give a little bit of context and then I'll answer the question is WordPress is 20 years old, right? It wasn't built for scaling websites. It wasn't built for kind of, inbound marketing, lots of teams producing lots of content. As I mentioned, some of the issues are security vulnerabilities, user interface problems, bloat, site getting too slow because of lots of plugins. So headless has kind of emerged as a new category. It's a very technical term, but in theory, what you're doing is you're separating the front end and the back end. So instead of jumbling everything together, you're doing a separation. You're decoupling the front end and the back end. We focus on the back end, so we focus on the content repository, the database, and then it feeds the front end through APIs. So it's a kind of a new approach. It's gaining a lot of traction amongst big brands, consumer brands looking for omni-channel. And I guess the benefits then to kind of fully answer the question are much quicker websites. So you get a real opportunity to get blazingly quick websites. You get this kind of ability for your developers to create their own front end. They're not kind of wedded to templates. They're not constrained by templates. It's more secure, right? The security footprint is much lower. It's API based, as I mentioned. So you can kind of mix and match lots of great tech and, end up then with just some stunning websites.
That's super interesting. Thank you for explaining. What are your best features?
Yeah, so for us, I guess we're taking Contento are taking a slightly different approach, right? We're doing what's called a vertical offering, right? So again, if you go back, most content management systems are horizontal, right? They're not picking any particular verticals. We're taking a different approach. We're kind of saying, okay, let's look at WordPress, let's look at some of the other headless CMSs. Let's see the best bits that we really like and the bits that we think are not so good. So I guess the best features that we have are the best that you get from headless, but with a very deliberate B2B SaaS slant. So we're making a big assumption that you're using our solution to manage and maintain a B2B SaaS website. By making that assumption, we're kind of taking a stance, and we're not saying this is an open box. You can send your content to different heads. It's for building websites. So therefore, when you get in the look and feel of the product, so getting back to your exact kind of question on the features, the kind of beautiful interface, so beautifully designed, we put a lot of focus on pixel perfect design, Christian, making it intuitive though for marketing people, because again, one of the challenges over time, Christian, is developers will often build the website, marketing then are kind of in charge of maintaining it and often really struggle. So we've taken a lot of attention on, can we make it nice and easy for marketing to use? And you get all the benefits, of course, of other headless features that I mentioned in terms of really speedy, really quick site, really secure. And then I guess the last point, Christian, is by assuming it's being used for a B2B SaaS website, we can make sure that things like search engine optimization are done properly. They're not a plugin. You're not using something like Yoast. You're using something that's kind of integral to the product.
Absolutely. But why did you choose the B2B SaaS industry?
Yeah, so that's my background, right? That's the industry that I know well, right? I've been spending my career in it, right? So and every time I've worked in it, I've worked in marketing functions, and of course, our website is the window on the world, Christian. So it's the place that I know best, right? And I've been frustrated, like many others, with kind of can we do a better job on helping the website drive leads and drive conversions? And often you're doing things like A/B testing or looking at copy changes or design changes when actually the core infrastructure can really help. So it's the industry that I know best, right? And then, I thought actually, having been a consultant into B2B SaaS for a long time, perfect opportunity to do my own startup in the field where I know some of the pains that people have because they're the pains I would have had.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes total sense. Can you share with us one success story?
Yeah, so we've had a recent migration that we've just done whereby we had someone that was, again, not unsurprisingly, on WordPress, a pretty big tech company in Ireland. They were very frustrated with a number of things, right? The site was definitely getting a bit bloated, but I mean, getting a bit slow and sluggish. And again, as companies mature, as sites mature, Christian, you run into this kind of world where you could have had 5 or 6 marketing people working on a site over a period of time, and they're adding in different plugins, they're adding in different code, they're picking different themes. Often they're not being updated. People are afraid they're going to break the website. So this was a site that was a high traffic site, and they were just done on WordPress. They were intrigued by Headless. They could see that this was an area of growth built on what's called the Jamstack. And their technology leaders in particular could see the appeal of going down a headless route. So we actually helped them with the migration. So rather than just provide the CMS, we worked with them. Again, we're a startup, right? So in our first year, you do things that don't scale, right? So we helped them with the migration. And of course, they were now able to configure the content modeling in the back end to meet their needs and sort of now have a really fast website. And there's been a reduction in the dependency on developers, Christian. So that's kind of a key piece. You don't need to be constantly knocking on the door of developers saying, hey, can you build me a page? Hey, can you remove this people from the About Us page because they no longer work here? Or can you change the top level navigation? You can do it all yourself. So I guess that's one example of a recent success story.
That's awesome. But in the future, do you also plan to keep the migration service available?
It's a really good question, actually, yeah, because and I'm torn, right? I don't want to be a professional services outfit. We want to be building software that people use, but the reality is, most of our target audience, Christian, are people that are on existing platforms, right? We're not really a solution. Headless is not really a solution for your brand new startup coming out the door, right? Even though we use it ourselves, obviously, but for most, Squarespace or Wix might be fine for the first year just to get you up and running. So there's always going to be this notion of migration. I think what we'll end up doing, Christian, and this is our plan, I guess, is, having a close-knit bunch of partners and freelancers that can support the migration. And look, over time, we look to improve the different migration, routes from different legacy applications. But I think partnership, Christian, will be probably the way we'll go forward. Obviously, we want to keep the total costs down, so we want to keep it as modest as we can, because I guess replatforming, is a kind of big decision in some ways. It's usually badly needed, right? If you're looking to improve the performance of your website, there's strong drivers to be wanting to migrate in the first place, but it is an exercise that does involve some technical expertise and some legwork depending on the size of the site. So I think partnership will be the route we'll go down and work with some agencies across Europe that are interested in supporting this kind of work.
That's a smart way to do it, so congratulations. What is the pricing for Contento?
Yeah, so again, the pricing in euro is, an annual license to make it easy is 5,000 per annum, and then the premium version is 10,000 per annum. Obviously, there's per monthly pricing, which would be just a derivative of that, with, of course, a free trial for developers to kind of get in, kick the tires, see what it's like. I guess, look, we're trying to keep the pricing, we're clearly an enterprise offering. It's not for, your first startups. The feature set is definitely enterprise grade, but we do see that some of the others in the Headless CMS are what I'd call price gouging, sort of definitely at the trying to hit 6 figures per annum. We're not in that camp. We're as we said, at the other end of the spectrum.
I understand. How competitive is the Headless CMS space?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, right? Every category in B2B SaaS is very competitive now. So in some ways, you start with the CMS market, which is the content management system market, which is big, right? And of course, but the flip side is, there are billions of websites out there, right? So, but when you look into the headless CMS space, it's about 8 or 10 years old, Christian, but it's really taken off, right? So in the last few years, there's been quite a lot of venture capital gone into the space. There's probably 50, 60, 70 vendors in headless alone. Now, it's a very technical area, right? So it's probably known amongst developers and web agencies, but not by the general public. So
Yeah.
it's very competitive. But I guess all markets are these days, and then it's a case of, can you position yourself in a viable niche? And that's the strategy we're adopting, right? We believe that ours is the best solution. If you're a growing or scaling tech or B2B SaaS company, then, as you look at your range of options, Contento, is going to be a perfect match for you. And therefore, your competition set is slightly different than just looking at the world of content management systems.
Yeah. When did you start the company and how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so the company is just under a year old, and there's three co-founders, and we all have B2B SaaS backgrounds. One runs
Awesome.
a large technology company. He was formerly um, uh, used to build websites, right? The CTO, who's our co-founder, is also working in website building for over 10 years. So the three of us kind of came from different angles, Christian. And, I could see it from the marketing side of the fence, a lot of frustration with the infrastructure and architecture. Um, and, one of the other co-founders that I alluded to earlier was looking to move off WordPress, was looking to move to a headless CMS solution, looked at a number of options in the market, and, felt that, they were great and had strong feature sets, but none of them took a kind of unique position, which is what we're doing, which is actually, why don't we build one for B2B SaaS companies? And therefore, you can shape the product for that audience. And that was the audience all three of us came from. Admittedly, it's crowded, and we get that, but I think most categories, as I said earlier, are pretty crowded. So then it's a case of not letting that upset or worry you. It just becomes a case of validation that the market opportunity exists, that there is a market for what you offer, and therefore can you kind of carve out a viable niche. And I guess our thesis is that huge numbers of companies will start moving to headless. When you start looking at the logos on the various headless CMS websites, and you see everyone from Adidas to Nike to Burger King to The Economist moving to headless, and then people like Intercom and Stripe and Teamwork in Ireland moving to headless, you can sort of see the pattern that those that have got strong tech teams are leading the way, I guess.
But when should a company think about switching to headless CMS? Because you said your clients are mostly enterprises.
It's a great question, right? So what I would say is, if you've got a strong tech or dev team in place, that are familiar with Jamstack, which is JavaScript based, I guess, API based approach to building sites, there's no reason that you couldn't get going pretty earlier on your journey. I guess often in the first year or two, particularly startups and tech companies that we target, they're just trying to get going. So it's a case of lots to do. Maybe in those instances, best on building a very basic site on a Squarespace or Wix.
Yeah.
But there's also, a kind of a journey, right? That after a few years, replatforming becomes, very desirable, right? So the kind of drivers that might make you think is, if you're on WordPress and you're paying a retainer every month for someone to make minor or modest changes that you can't do yourself, that's a signal you might want to move. If the web team are afraid of breaking things because if they're on WordPress, that might be a trigger that you might want to move. But then the flip side is if you get a new chief marketing officer, they might decide, actually, I want to do a replatform. That's my first big project. If you raise capital, if you land a check, Series A, Series B, part of that journey is always investing in the site. So that's another kind of inflection point that you might say, okay, I'm going to go look at headless now. Because ultimately the benefits are those that are valuable for those that are ambitious about scaling and growing. Because I go back to, really quick websites, which help obviously with conversion rates, more secure, beautiful design because you're kind of decoupling the front end from the back end, so developers can pick frameworks that they prefer and that they like. So there's lots of drivers, I guess, and I think that the trend will continue of more and more looking at headless as a kind of a viable route forward.
Thank you so much for sharing. And how big is your team right now? The entire team?
5 of us at the moment, so we're hiring at the moment. So we've got some openings, but that's where we're at right now.
Are you bootstrapped?
No, we did take some finance, so we have a couple of investors that would have been well-known software people that one has had a number of exits, and they were very much part of the initial round.
Do you think you found the product market fit?
Good question. I think we need more evidence, right? We're a bit earlier in the journey. I think, I think we have, right? But I think the data needs to support that. So I think you probably need to be maybe 3-4 years old to really get it. We've already got some good evidence that we're in the right space, but I will always retain this kind of sense of assuming we're not, because I think that keeps you laser focused on continuing to talk to people, to continue to understand the pains of the cohort that you're going after, and being very willing and interested in listening. So I'm going to say no, we haven't. Obviously, if I was looking to raise money in the morning, I'd probably say yes, we have. But I think for now, I'm going to say no, we don't.
Transparency is appreciated. What has been your best growth tactic for gaining new customers?
So one of the things is a lot of the focus initially is what you'd expect, which is inbound marketing through content creation. And I guess we've taken a slightly different perspective there, Christian, in that most of the competitors in our space, they're very technical. They're very focused on developers. They're very focused on, marketing and raising awareness amongst that community. I've been doing a lot of the writing myself, and I'm a non-technical founder, and I've been writing for the marketing persona. So I've been really trying to talk to that audience to the neglect of the other audience. So we're kind of taking an approach that says, if you're a techie or developer, don't worry about reading our blogs. Just, take a look under the hood and, look at our docs. And if you want, jump on a call with a CTO and you'll get, satisfied from that engagement process that, it's the real deal and it's a good fit for your requirements. And then the flip side is the marketing persona is always one that's involved in decisions around websites, right? So that's the audience that I'm trying to educate, and it's trying to be on a less technical basis. So again, that's the primary strategy for now, as well as things like word of mouth, referrals from contacts in the industry that know us.
What has been your biggest challenge since starting the company?
I guess one of the things, Christian, is things you've got lots of dependencies, right, on third parties in full stop, right, and nothing ever goes as quickly as you want, right. So that's been one of the challenges, right. We want to move a lot quicker, but you don't want to layer up your employee base too quickly, because you obviously need to kind of manage growth accordingly. And then you're reliant on freelancers and other third parties who are obviously busy doing other things, and you're trying to keep the price down because you're in your first couple of years. So you're probably not a priority client for them. That's been, look, everyone that's been working with us has been great, but I do wish we could move a little bit faster, right? But because that's actually one of the key things that startups have, right, is their ability to move quickly. I just want to move a bit more quickly, right? So that's a frustration and challenge of mine, but hopefully things will, start moving a bit quicker as we get into May and June.
I think all founders wish that things move more quickly, but we also need to have patience.
Well, this is it. Yeah, no, you're right, Christian. I need to be more patient, but it is the nature of the startup world, right? You're busy building, which costs money, and you want to perfect things, and you want everything to be great, and it's tricky, right? This is the beauty of startups. They're exhilarating, right? Because you're doing something that's building something new, and therefore you've got to overcome different challenges.
What is the future vision for Contento? The main vision for you?
Yeah, so I think to be the dominant player, I mean, B2B SaaS as a category is, a big growth space. Um, and, the vision is for us to continue to build out the feature set such that the offering is just so compelling that anybody that's in B2B SaaS, is going to look at us and say, actually, these are the guys for us. Because if you think about it, the CMS space or content management space, there's not much brand awareness, right? People will have heard, the average person will have heard of WordPress, but they won't have heard necessarily of the other platforms. So for us, the vision would be that if you're in B2B SaaS or technology company, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you're looking to go headless, Contento is the option for you.
Awesome. I love to hear your full backstory. So how you started your career and your experience.
Yeah, so I guess I started. I'm a bit older than you, Christian. I think I started in banking many years ago, and the bank that I worked with in the UK is called Barclays, who did a joint venture with a software company, one of the first in the UK, actually, called FreeServe, which was what was called an ISP. So it was an internet service provider. So it's how you got onto the internet. Um, and that kind of got me into the world of software. My kind of primary degree was in economics and marketing, and software wasn't on my radar. But we run 56K dial-ups. That was, the world that I knew, which meant, so for younger people or younger listeners, that means getting online was a very frustrating experience. You had to use a disk and plug in an Ethernet cable, and there was all these pinging noises. And then you landed on a portal, which was your kind of route in, but the speeds were really slow. So you couldn't have any SaaS back then. But as the internet started speeding up, uh, and the growth of things like Google and the growth of things like Amazon and the growth of things like, Microsoft Word and Excel and Google Sheets and all these applications that people started using, over time, people began to think, well, instead of doing all this in Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets, let's start doing some software. So I've been in B2B SaaS probably for 15 years, worked for lots of different companies, but in the last 10 years, predominantly as a consultant into VC-backed B2B SaaS companies in Europe, often working as their part-time chief marketing officer. So that's kind of the journey I've really enjoyed. I think it's a fascinating area to work in. Still really early, right? Which is the other really great thing. It's got lots of years to go. And I really now find that B2B SaaS is a great business to be in. We're in it ourselves now, which is fantastic. And I think there's lots of good years to come. And the beauty of it is you can be anywhere in the world, writing great code, and you've got a fighting chance of creating a great product.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really loved how you put it. I love to hear your best piece of advice for a marketer starting in B2B SaaS.
That's a great question. So I think you've got to have a voracious appetite for reading and learning, right? It's kind of one of those funny ones. We're all very, very busy, but you do need to kind of devote time to becoming skilled at the various functions that would sit under the marketing hat. So if you think about it, it's a very difficult function, right? You've got lots of different strands to it. You've got everything from lead gen to attribution to paid acquisition to running events to writing sales collateral to hiring a team to resourcing. It's a very broad discipline. So I think you've got to be a voracious reader. And this is why content like this, right, is very useful, not just reading, but to listen to stuff and to try and, spend a couple of hours a week learning, right? And, there's great courses out there you can do for free. There's lots of great content. I think part of the journey, I guess, is to try and figure out, who are your go-to people for content, because there's also lots of people that are, creating lots of noise. And, with AI, ChatGPT, there's going to be a lot more noise out there. So part of it is, can you identify a couple of sources that are, really able to transform your understanding and help you, grasp the core elements to the brief.
Thank you for sharing. What's your favorite B2B SaaS product? You have a lot of experience. What's your favorite apart from Contento, obviously?
It's a great question, right? So, what ones do I like using? I like Zero, right? I think it's beautifully designed. It's an accounting software application. Don't like spending a lot of time in there, but it's a pretty pleasant experience. That's probably my favorite one, Zero. I think it's well designed.
Those are my main questions. If you have anything else to share, this would be the moment.
No, listen, thank you so much for having me on. It's been great to chat with you, and yeah, it's some good questions, and I hope they made sense.
Absolutely. Thank you